How's everybody doing? Everybody good? Everybody excited to be here?
Are we all here? Yeah, I think are we okay with lighting that way? You guys want to be kind of like hidden? So you can text and fall asleep and we won't notice? No, okay, we can see you all. Well, hey, we are happy to be here. Thank you, Cameo, for that introduction. And we thought we'd just take a little time to introduce ourselves a little further because, you know, it might be nice for you to know who on earth is up here. So my name is Molly. I'm married to Craig, and I should have worn the shirt, but I have this shirt that says, I love Craig, and then I made one for him. It says, I love Molly, and he wears it, and I don't have to bribe him or anything.
You know, she did say, I made one for Craig.
Well, yeah, but you do wear it, and I appreciate that.
Wear it, yes.
But the next shirt that I'm going to make for myself is going to say #1 on Craigslist. Thank you. So 3 things you need to know about Craig. He is a youth pastor in Plymouth, Minnesota, senior high, although he does like junior hires almost as much as senior hires. Just kidding. He likes you all. And #2, he wears his socks inside out. Okay, why? There's one other, okay, so there's one other 2 people, 3 in here. You were seeing a couple head nods. You feel like,
my
what?
people, my
oh
people.
My goodness, Mora is the place for you. So, well, do you want to tell us why you wear them inside out? Because when we got married and I did my faithful duties of laundry, no, I'm just kidding. He really does laundry just as much as me. Thank you for that. But when I do fold his socks, he told me really early on, actually, if you could just leave my socks inside out. I'm like, what? So, why?
Now, socks have come a long ways in the last, 100 years or so. But generally speaking, the socks that we wear, they're like rough on the inside, right? The outside of the sock is nice and smooth, but the inside has got like all these little bumps and stuff. And so, like, I have just a little bit of hair on the top of my feet.
Let's be honest, babe.
A lot.
Let's be honest. It's like an ogre. Okay.
Ogres do not have hair on the top of their feet.
What am I trying to say? From
Sasquatch? Is that what you're... Hobbit.
Thank you. Yeah. That's what I was going for.
I do not have hobbit feet. But anyways, it agitates the top of my feet. So you turn them inside out where it's nice and smooth and it doesn't bother my feet. So
is that why the rest of you all have hairy feet?
My story.
No, she's like, no. All right, well, you guys can have a support group.
For others, it's probably the seam. Is it the seam? The seam,
okay.
yeah. That's another
one.
one.
The seam catches on your hair on your feet. Anyways, moving on. We didn't come here to talk about this. Third thing, what was I going to tell them? Oh, yes, Craig, though he is a youth pastor, and that's kind of what he does, you used to be a radio personnel. Is that how you say it?
An announcer?
Yes, Craig went to school for radio broadcasting. And one thing that drew me to him was his radio voice. So could you give us a sample?
That's not true. You're making that up.
Yeah, when we met for the first time, you're like, hello, Molly. Okay, can you?
I didn't do that.
Can you give them a sample? Do you guys want to hear his radio voice? Yes. Okay.
So there's a season of my life. Yes, I have that in my history. I went to school for broadcasting. I've done play-by-play for high schools all around the state of Minnesota, Northwest Iowa, and so on. So if you happen to be cruising along the highway at some point, turn the dial, and I happen to be on, it might sound something like this. 1 minute after the top of the hour, 74 degrees outside. We're here at Hillman Baptist Church. Actually, let's send it back to you, Molly.
That was pretty good, wasn't it?
It's dumb. Right. That's dumb. So, enough about me. Let me tell you about my wife. She has a sense for adventure. She is an extroverted, though since becoming a mom, turning a little bit more introverted through the years. But she's an extrovert. She is the life of the party. She loves anything that's dangerous and sometimes illegal.
Not true.
Well, close. She travels the world telling students to keep their pants on. That is the name of her most requested talk. It's a purity message, and it's called Keep Your Pants On. And that name in of itself, generally captures people's attention. But she's been doing that. She's an award-winning speaker. She's got some. You do have awards that you won. You traveled to Florida and stuff. So, anyways, so she does that message, which is a lot of fun. She also has an alias, like a lot of superheroes. Batman, Bruce Wayne, Clark Kent, Superman. Wonder Woman, Diana Prince. My wife is also known as the Cheeseball Chick, and she travels around as the Cheeseball Chick, bringing joy to the world, one cheeseball at a time. So,
and actually, this turns into a jetpack, and I will fly away.
So maybe you could explain a little bit further what this is, and
well, I will say I felt warmly received here because most of you ate a cheese ball. Thank you. That really made me feel special. We won't talk about those who turned me down. But so I was speaking at a youth event. Oh my goodness, this is a long time ago. Probably it was over 8 years ago. I was speaking at a youth event in the state of Virginia, and I was given a container of cheese balls as a gift. So you've all seen this big container before, right? So here, this big container of cheese balls had to come back to Minneapolis with me. And so I'm carrying this container, not this one because that'd be really stale, but I'm carrying this container of cheese balls through, let's go back to that's distracting. Yep, we're not there yet. That's okay. That's coming up. So I was carrying this container of cheese balls through the airport, and everybody was staring at me, which was a little awkward because then they started laughing, and I thought, what is going on? Do I have something in my teeth? There's, something in my hair. Is my zipper down? Am I trailing toilet paper from the restroom? Then I realized everyone is just laughing and staring at me because there's a girl with this giant container of cheese balls, and it's funny. So that became fun. Everybody around me is laughing. That was fun. Then I got to the security checkpoint, and you have to put everything you own in a bin through the x-ray machine. So I put my cheese balls in a bin. They go down the conveyor belt. They get stopped in the x-ray machine, and the security guard is looking at the screen like, what is that? They come out the other end, and 8 security guards surround my cheese balls. So I'm like, well, it was fun while it lasted, but clearly they're not going to let me take this many snacks on the plane. Oh no, they didn't take them away. They were just laughing and smiling and wanted to know why I had this giant container of cheese balls. It was so fun and funny. Then I got on the plane, and I'm sitting in my seat holding my cheese balls. And over the intercom of the airplane, for the entire airplane to hear, the flight attendant says, ladies and gentlemen, if any of you are hungry, there's a cheese ball lady with snacks in aisle 9D. He announces me over the intercom of the flight. I mean, who's ever had that done before? That was pretty cool. He announces me 2 more times, a total of 3 times. I am now everyone's friend because I have cheese balls. And I went through the Chicago O'Hare Airport to connect to Minneapolis. People are yelling at me across the corridor because they know me because I'm the girl with cheese balls. I actually had some significant conversations because it started with cheese balls breaking the ice. And I was talking to people about what I was doing and speaking about. So it's like cheese balls to Jesus in 60 seconds. I didn't have to do anything. It was awesome. So I get home and told my friends and family the cheese ball story. And one of my friends said, you should carry cheese balls around. Make people smile, spread joy. And so I am not one to turn down a dare. So originally I created a duct tape backpack, wore it to Rosedale Mall in the cities. People would flock to me. When you have snacks on your back, they do. But then I would offer people snacks and take the container, the lid off, and that's when people were like, oh, no, thank you, because of germs. Germs, right? I mean, gross. So that's when I decided I needed to create a sanitary dispensing system where the lid stays sealed and you can eat cheese balls germ-free, as many of you did. You will not get sick from the cheese balls tonight. So I created this and started wearing them, and it is unbelievable, the stories. That we're not going to fill the evening with talking about cheese balls, but we could. I have been asked to speak places just on the cheese balls. So it's amazing the things God will use. 1 Corinthians 10:31, it's one of your life verses on your wedding ring, and it's whatever you do, whether you eat or drink, do it all for the glory of God. So I wear cheese balls for the glory of God, and it's super fun. And that's my alias. This is my 153rd container. I did wear them on our first date, wore them at our wedding, but not down the aisle because there are some boundaries. And they've been to 9 countries and 33 states. So that's and cheese balls. Feel free to eat them after if you're hungry.
And as prestigious as it is to be on the radio, one other thing that you need to know about my wife is she's actually a movie star. She's big time. And the Cheese Balls recently made their Hollywood debut on a TV show that doesn't exist anymore, but did exist up until the last couple years ago. Does anybody remember the ABC TV show Wipeout? Anybody ever see the TV show Wipeout?
Oh, great.
Where
3
contestants run an obstacle course. Now, it's not like American Ninja Warrior where you try to be these peak athletes running these courses. They will just take random characters. Not that my wife is not in peak physical condition, keep in mind. But they take characters. And so we saw this TV show, and the moment we saw it, Molly says, I want to be on that show. So somehow she got on that show, and here's the picture of Molly being interviewed by the hostess. Her name was Jill, and she's explaining how the cheese balls work to her on the TV show. If you saw the show, you might remember one particular obstacle on the course called the big balls. So here's a picture of Molly flying over the big balls. It's a little hard to see with the lighting, but she is covered in mud from head to toe, so that's why she looks a little dark in that picture also. And I know, you're saying, Craig, pictures are great, but man, it would have been really nice if you brought a clip with you from the show. Well, I did. So we can't play her entire segment. Spoiler alert, she did not win $50,000 on the show, but here's just a little clip of what I think was my wife's worst wipeout on the show that night. So take a look.
I'm thinking bowling. Cheese Ball, the only contestant on the yellow track and psyched up to go. Gee, kids, process. The sweeper on plans will right on the cheese day. Yeah, that can't be good.
How about a round of applause for my wife?
Thank
Come
you.
on. She has no memory of that experience for some reason.
I don't remember any of that. Yeah. So before we jump into the reason we're here, one more important introduction, and that is that we have 2 kids, actually, and we brought a picture of when our daughter, our oldest, was born. So there we go. So she's called the Cheeseball Chiclet. And actually, she got a little brother a couple years ago, and so here's a picture of both of our kids. They like each other most days. Now, and then we have a family picture to show you. If we would have done Christmas cards, this would have been our Christmas card. So, and you saw that cute one there and the one before, and maybe I was at whoever we ate with. You're kind of talking about, oh, your kids are so nice in public, and your pictures look so nice, and we see Facebook and we think everyone's family is perfect except ours, and so it wouldn't be fair for us to show you these cute little professional pictures without showing you that we understand parenting. Parents, we do. This was from a couple years ago when I was trying to get the kids ready for church by myself because Craig was already there, but this is a little bit more of reality here. So we just want to be real with you. No wonder my daughter is crying. Her brother looks like an owl, and she has a bowl haircut. So I think we just need to take a moment, kids, and remember all the things your parents have done for you. It can be hard, but we are so glad you're here as families. This is so cool, and we're really excited to share with you the message that we have called Lessons from a Love Story.
So we're going to back up to February of 2008.
Oh, we got a wedding picture, though, babe.
Right? Show the wedding picture.
There we go.
Yep.
We've been married for 8 years. Little history. Now, go ahead.
So I'm going to take you back 9 years where I am living in a town called Long Prairie. And I'm the youth pastor at a Baptist church in Long Prairie. I'm kicking back in my lazy boy chair. I'm watching my 52-inch television, minding my own business. And all of a sudden, my cell phone vibrates, and I take a look, and it says, "Hey, Craig," message from a friend. "Hey, Craig, would you ever consider dating someone 9 years younger than you?" So I'm kind of doing the math in my head, and you guys are smart, so you're probably figuring it out already. Yes, Molly is 9 years younger than me.
And we don't recommend this to you 16-year-olds right now, okay? Because that would be awkward.
Right.
And illegal.
So before I can process the text, I get a second message from the same friend, and it says, "Hey, Craig, go to mollybarnhart.com, tell me what you think, and be objective." So now you also know Molly's maiden name, which was Barnhart, and I don't know about you, but I think she just got a slight upgrade when she married me.
Come on, that was a blow.
That's
I
true.
couldn't do it. Well, yes, I know. I mean, anyone know what it's like to be made fun of for your first, middle, or last name, or all of the above? Okay, right? You can't do anything about it. I hear you. I feel your pain. I was called Molly Barn Door, Molly Barnyard, and my favorite in junior high, Molly Barn Fart. So
anyways, I went to mollybarnfart.com, and Don't go there. So then I corrected the spelling, and I found out we had a lot of things in common. It was basically a website set up for her as a speaker. I realized we traveled in some of the same circles, lots of fun pictures of her doing adventurous things. And I found out she opened a coffee shop, like as a young entrepreneur opening up her very own coffee shop in Minneapolis. That was pretty cool. And then I clicked on this one tab called Fun Stuff. And when I clicked on Fun Stuff, it opened up a series of videos, probably 20 videos, of her doing random, crazy, bizarre, dare I say, immature things. And you're saying
I'm
that
saying,
might
how
be,
is this applicable to our story right now?
You're saying that might
I
be
don't
a
think
little harsh, but it's applicable because this is my first impression of Molly Barnhart. And you might be saying to yourself, well, Craig, it's great to hear your story and everything, but it'd be great if you brought a clip of one of those videos.
I don't think we need to see.
So thankfully I did,
Oh,
and here's a clip from that was on her website, and this was my first impression
Never
of Molly.
should have been on my website. Oh dear.
How does she know you love her? How does she know she's yours?
How does she know that you love her?
How does you love her?
How does she know that you really, really,
Truly love her.
how does she know that you love her?
How do you show her you love her?
How does she know that you really, really, truly love her?
Okay, we can cut that.
And that's my
right?
first impression
Oh my goodness.
of my
Okay,
wife.
so here is the deal. Okay, that is so awkward. Just so you know, it's so awkward to like watch me and you watching me, and it's like weird. Okay, this is so you're like, why did you put it online? Okay, this is why. Because I was speaking for youth and teenagers, and I just have this passion to want to show young people that you can have so much fun in life without drugs and alcohol. That was all natural, ladies and gentlemen, okay? There were no drugs or alcohol involved in the filming of that episode. In fact, the reason that came to be is I was snowed into my apartment, and my friend was 9 months pregnant, like past due. Like due date was 10 days before. She's like, I want to have this baby. And so I made my friend this like labor-inducing video because I heard if you laugh a lot, you'll have your baby. So anyways, that was for her. And she said, oh, it's funny, put it online, and teenagers know they can have fun, all natural. And so I did, and never thinking my future husband's first impression of me would be through that video. But speaking of first impressions, may I share mine about you? Okay, so I was at a restaurant in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, with two friends. One of them happened to be a very good friend of Craig's. I didn't know that, though. I didn't know who Craig was. I didn't know he had been creeping on me. You know, some people call that stalking,
Yeah,
okay?
guys call that research.
Okay,
That's
well,
what we
anyways,
call that.
whatever. So I'm out to eat with these two ladies. I'm 26 at the time. I'm single, and one of them says, Molly, what do you feel God's calling you to in life? And I said, well, I love speaking. I love teenagers. I love ministry. I said, I love when I get to speak to guys and girls, but I love when I get to speak to just girls, because I'm a girl and I get it. Not that I don't like guys, because obviously I do, but anyways. So I said, I don't know if it's me or God, but I have this ever-increasing desire to someday marry a guy who maybe he speaks, and maybe he's a youth pastor, and maybe, like, I'm describing Craig, okay? So the one friend who knows him, she's like, oh my goodness, Craig Sanborn. And I'm like, oh, Craig Sanborn. So I Google him. No, I'm just kidding. Didn't creep on you. Anyways, these ladies at the restaurant, because the other lady ended up knowing him too, they go on and on about Craig Sanborn. They're like, oh, he's a youth pastor, and he's got a great radio voice, and he loves disc golf, and he's athletic, and he's good looking, and he loves teenagers.
That's true.
And
All
he
those
loves
things are true.
Okay, so anyways, yes. So then, my first impression, they somehow at the same time, you guys, for the entire restaurant to hear, said, oh, and he's a virgin. And everybody, like, in the restaurant stopped and stared at our table, like, what? Who? Where? Why? And so that was my first impression of you.
First of all, I don't think you can say virgin in church.
Oh, just
okay?
did. Virgin.
All right. So,
Virgin Mary, hello, we've said that before.
well,
Okay, anyways.
not without consequences. No, kidding. Kidding. So some of you, well, let me back up. All right, for the sake of maybe some of the younger people in the audience, you might be saying, what is a virgin? Virgin, for the sake of argument, is someone who has not had sex. So I was a 35-year-old virgin. Some of you might be asking the question, why were you a 35-year-old virgin? Others of you, more cynical, might be saying, Craig, it's plain and simple why you were a 35-year-old virgin. It makes sense. But there were actually reasons behind that. And those had to do with decisions that I made when I was in middle school and high school. First of all, I was brought up in a Christian home, grew up in the church, was taught that sex was for marriage and designed for marriage. And I know, call me crazy, I kind of bought into that belief and that concept. And actually, in the book of John, chapter 10, verse 10, here's what it says. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come, Jesus says here, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. I believe that God intends our life for us to live that to the full. To live that to the full in every area of our life, in our physical relationships, in our relationships at work and at school, that we can live life to the fullest. In the same way that Molly said, I shot a video so I could prove to students you could have fun in life without drugs and alcohol. I believe that to be true, and I believe that God has our best in mind when that comes to physical and even outside of that. And so when I read that in Scripture and when I live that out in my life, I really could care less that it was advertised to a restaurant full of people that I was a 35-year-old virgin, because I bought into this book right here and God's words and his instructions for us. And you know, to be honest, apart from that, even if you take Scripture apart from that, even if you take God's word out of it, so much about waiting until marriage for intimacy and sex just makes sense. Because when you take something and you use it in a way that it's not intended to be used for, like sex, there's always consequences. So let's just say, for sake of argument here, that we were going to do something out of context. And to get the blood pumping a little bit, we were going to split the room right down the aisle here, and we're going to go play a game of basketball. Okay?
Oh, yeah, I saw it. They have hoops outside.
You got a hoop.
So
this is perfect, okay? So we got the hoop. We're ready to go. Forget 5-on-5. We're just going to have a free-for-all at this point. So, young lady in the front, thank you for your courage to sit in the front row. Now all you have to do is tell me your name. What's your name? Leah is going to do the traditional jump ball for her side of the room. And your name, young lady? Emma is going to do the jump ball for her side of the room. So here we go. We're ready to go. Everybody's lined up. We're taking our positions. I'm going to do the traditional jump ball, okay? So I'm going to toss the ball in the air, and out from behind my back, I pull out not a basketball, but a bowling ball. I said, this is all I could find, so this is what we're going to use. And I toss that bowling ball up in the air. What's going to happen? Somebody's going to get hurt, all right? Yeah, somebody's going to get hurt, right? Emma might break a toe or something, who knows? But Leah scoops that ball up off the ground. She can't find anyone open on her team, right? So she says, forget this passing stuff. I'm just going to take a shot right here from half court, and she launches that bowling ball up in the air. Now what's going to happen? Well, somebody's going to die. That's what's going to happen, right? So here's the deal. Why don't we use a bowling ball for basketball? This is worth the price of admission right here. Why don't we use a bowling ball for basketball? It's not what it's for. Because a bowling ball is meant for bowling. And when you take something like sex, intimacy, and you use it outside of God's design, there are always consequences.
I've been speaking on this topic for over 10 years now, and like Craig said, my talk is called Keep Your Pants On. It's blunt, as the title implies, but in parts of my message, I share the reality, and I'll share just a tiny bit with you about what happens when you use sex outside of its context, which God designed. In the next 24 hours across the U.S., we know from statistics that over 2,000 teenage girls will get pregnant. Over 2,000 teenage girls will get pregnant in the next 24 hours. I met one of those girls. I've met several over the years. And I met one at North St. Paul High School, but actually never even got her name. I just got a note. I was speaking at the school, and after all the students filed out, this girl comes up to me with her head down and hands me this note, and I said, "Oh, thank you," and she disappears into the crowd of people. And I figured she signed her name, but she didn't, and this is what she says. "Molly, I wish I would have waited too. I'm 6 weeks pregnant. I can't talk about it. I'm embarrassed. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do." And then she says, "You inspire me to change, ... She didn't actually write ... That would be weird, but 3 dots, okay. She says, "You inspire me to change. I'm sorry." Oh. So I read this note, and it sunk in. I went out into the hallway, tried to find her. I couldn't track her down. I didn't know her name. I prayed for her. This was years ago. I don't know what she did as a result of that, but I will tell you this. Moms and dads, guys and girls, God's design and purpose for this girl's life was never to experience the weight of that realization at that age. And then I have stories from guys and girls who come up and say, "Well, I didn't get pregnant, but I have a sexually transmitted disease that doctor says I'm going to have for life. I'll probably pass on to my husband or wife or whatever." In the next 24 hours across the U.S., over 8,000 teens will contract a sexually transmitted disease or infection. And I've had countless stories of lives affected because of that. And this is down and depressing, right? Look at their faces. This is sad. Man, okay, let's move on. Let's get happy. But this is the reality of when we don't trust that God has our best in mind, right? And that's our first lesson. And Craig read from John 10:10, where Jesus says, "I have come," like my mission in life, Jesus says, is to give you a full, an abundant life. But I think sometimes we don't believe him. Because if we really believed God's word, and that is his mission for our life and our goal, then wouldn't we want to obey, right? So here's our question for you, because yes, this is our story weaved in and out, but we want this to be about your story. So moms and dads, guys and girls, do you believe that God has your best in mind for you? Do you believe that? Do you believe that? I'm seeing some head nods. You don't have to. I mean, that's fine. He's an introvert. He never, you can just nod on the inside. That's fine. But I want you to ask, yourself, and especially teenagers, if you believe that God has your best in mind, then we encourage you to take him at his word and live accordingly, because, man, there's payoff. But then we know this, too, from having shared our story a lot and speaking on this topic and working with teenagers and parents, that some people will say, "Oh, Craig and Molly, that's a great lesson, and I believe that God had my best in mind at one point, but then I screwed it up." We hear that. People will say, "Oh, you have such a nice story, but, oh, I messed up mine, so too late for me." So we got people who are listening to this message and saying, "It doesn't apply to me because I screwed up." That's not the God I know. What I know from Scripture is that we have a God who redeems and restores and renews and makes old things new and heals and forgives. So that's the awesome news. So Craig and I want to encourage you and remind you that regardless of what your past is and what you've done in this topic, whether recently or a long time ago, or what you might be dealing with, that God still has your best in mind. Absolutely has your best in mind. And so my first impression of Craig, back at the restaurant, when I heard that there was this 35-year-old man out there with all these great qualities, and he was trusting God in the sex department and hadn't had sex, I was actually impressed. And so my first impression of you was a good one.
So it was actually that night my friend Heather was calling me up on the phone. I could hear Molly's voice in the background at the restaurant.
How did you know what I sounded like, Craig? Because you creeped on me.
Just a hunch. So Heather was saying to me, Craig, you have to meet this girl. You just have to meet her. And so we played a little email tag, a little phone tag. A couple of weeks turned into like a month or so, and we finally arranged to get together. Remember, she's in Minneapolis. I'm 2 hours away in Long Prairie. So we finally found a night to get together when I was going to be down in the Twin Cities. And we ended up meeting at her coffee shop, and then we went out to dinner from there. And if this was going to turn into anything special, I wanted to, really impress Molly. So I tried to think of the most romantic restaurant that I could possibly imagine. So we arrived at Applebee's, and she ordered steak. I ordered steak. I thought that was impressive. She went for steak. She ordered it rare. I don't know why.
Not
that
rare,
was
medium rare.
Well,
medium rare.
Regardless, it was a turn on. So we're sitting there, we're having a great conversation, right? And we're talking about things, and I said to her at one point, I said, Molly, I got a question, kind of a random question. She says, yeah. I said, do you ever get embarrassed? And she says, well, yeah, I get embarrassed. I said, yeah, well, I don't believe you. She said, well, why wouldn't you believe me? I said, well, can we talk about the 20 videos that you have posted online for the entire world to see right now? And I can see her getting a little embarrassed at that point. Right. But, like, the server came, and she paid for the meal, which was great. And we got in the car.
You paid for
I paid.
my meal.
Okay, so we drove back to Overflow, the coffee shop, and we never really finished our conversation. It was just kind of an abrupt ending.
Awkward.
She actually had some friends inside waiting for her. I had a 2-hour drive. So the best I could come up with at that moment was, hey, I had a great time. It was lots of fun. And I'll talk to you again soon. I'll talk to you later. And I got back in my car and headed back to
No,
Long
you
Prairie.
didn't say I'll talk to you later or I'll see you later or anything like that, because that's what I was hoping for.
I think.
Nope,
No, I
you
remember.
didn't. I was waiting for it. You said,
Okay.
it was a nice night. Bye. So I'm like, oh, replaying he saw 20 videos. I'm like, I didn't know he saw those. So I was like devastated. Like, he thinks I'm crazy. I am a little bit crazy, but like, really, I was like, oh no. And so I was very interested in you, and I thought, man, I hope that he gives me a hint that maybe he'll ask me out again or give me a call or something. Nope, nothing. You weren't like rude, but you didn't give me any hints. So I hung out with my friends that night, and we went out late to Perkins, and I remember sitting in the booth at Perkins, and I was like really worked up about this because I really liked this guy, but I was like, he thinks I'm crazy, so he's not gonna call me back. So I prayed right there in the Perkins booth, got down on my knees, and I just right there, quietly. And I just remember replaying this verse in my mind that I memorized in Awana years ago, Philippians 4:6, that says, be anxious for nothing. Other versions say, don't worry about anything. But in everything, by prayer and supplication, make your requests to God, and he'll give you peace. And so I prayed to God, and I said, God, I really like this guy, Craig, but I think he thinks I'm crazy. Could you, somehow nudge him to, get in touch with me, sort of soon, so that I don't have to wait, the typical 3 to 5 days, because that'd be a long time to wait, and, I'm not really good at waiting. So I'm, praying this desperate prayer to God and giving him my worries, and I go back at 1 a.m. to my apartment, jump on my computer to check my Facebook, see if I got any friends' messages or anything, and I had one message in my inbox from, whoops, Craig Sanborn. So I went and I brushed my teeth and took a shower and washed No, I opened it immediately and read it 65 times, frontwards, backwards, and all around. And he said, so I had a great time with you. Thank you for saying that. He said I had 2 hours to drive home, and the thought occurred to me as I was driving home that based on our conversation, you might think that I think you're crazy. You guys, seriously, just like that. I'm like, oh, well, do you? I mean, if you do, are you okay with that? So when he said, you actually didn't say that I wasn't crazy. You just said, you said, I get it. You said, I like it. And then he said, I would love to see you again. He says, I'll be back in the cities tomorrow, as in 8 hours from then. He's like, with my youth group, would you like to join us at the Twins game and roller skating? So notice he uses a youth group outing to ask a girl on a second date. So.
It's ingenious. It's a great idea. So that just leads us to another lesson. I think that sometimes we overlook. And that's this. Lesson number 2, God cares about details. God cares about details. Now, you're saying, well, what kind of details? Well, details that are important to you. things that mean a lot to you, I believe, mean a lot to the Lord. Things that are significant in your life are significant in his life because they're significant in your life. In the book of Psalm chapter 37, verse 4, it says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart." Now, we love to jump to the second half of that verse and say, "Oh, man, what's he going to give me? He's going to give me everything that I ask for." Look a little deeper. Now, take a look at the first part. Delight yourself in the Lord. Spend time with Jesus. Get to know your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. My father always used to tell me, he would say, "Craig, it's not about finding the right person. It's about becoming the right person." And if you don't know who you are with Jesus, you're never going to figure out who you are in a relationship with somebody else. And so as we delight ourselves in him and in the Lord, the desires that we have become his desires. His desires become our desires. We want what he wants. He wants what we want. And those things flow together so nice. And so I just truly believe that the details and things that are special and significant to you, they're special and significant to God.
So Craig then asked me out on a second date, I think after the youth group outing. That went well. Our third date, we went bowling. And who won at that? I think this is important for their spiritual walk.
Okay.
They need to know who won.
So I let her win in bowling, and we had gone out for
Sanborn.
breakfast. I let you win in bowling. So then the third date, after bowling, I was headed to a conference in Wisconsin. So again, I'm 2 hours away. I'm in the Twin Cities. We had breakfast. I let her win in bowling. And I'm on my way to this conference, and I just felt God stirring in me to go back and to pray with Molly. Like, this is only the third date, right?
Like
and
1 week.
So, right, not very long. And I'm like, Lord, what? I'm like, this is going to come off as weird or creepy here. And
It's okay,
but-
you already had creeped. So.
Okay, all right. So I drive back to the parking lot. I call her up on the phone. I said, "Hey, Molly, what are you doing?" Like, we had just left each other's presence. And she tells me nothing. And
Which
I'm
is
like, okay.
not totally true. By that time, you dropped me off on the date, and I really liked you. I still do a lot, even more.
Thanks.
I ran down the apartment hallway, ran into my friend Jessica's apartment. I was like, I like him, I like him, I like him, I like him. I thought he was long gone driving to Wisconsin, and then I see that he calls, and he says, what are you doing? And I said, nothing. I was like, crazy.
So she came out of the apartment. She came into my car, and I said, "Hey, would it be okay? I know this might be weird, but it would be okay if we just prayed together and committed our relationship to the Lord." I said, "I don't know what the future has in store, if it's going to be a friendship, if maybe sometime we'll do ministry together or something else. But I just like to pray over our relationship." So we prayed and committed things that day.
Right, and you asked me another question, too. This is very important. He likes, guys, leave out details, important details. What other question did you ask me before we prayed?
Favorite soft drink?
Oh, Craig said, after he said, could we pray, he said, would it be okay if I held your hand? You guys, yeah, that is cute, but come on, he used prayer to make the first move. I just want to make sure you're all picking up on that, okay? So we're not...
Well, yeah, see, the guys are picking up on that. They're thinking pickup line in their head right now.
Okay.
Girls, if any guy asks you to go pray behind the church, just kick him in the groin and move on, okay? But
let me just bring this back to the guys for a second, because why do we don't want to share random stories that aren't applicable to you at all. I will tell you guys, I'm speaking to you guys, okay? When Craig came back after a week, we weren't even an official couple, and he asked if we could pray together. Man, he was already taking the lead spiritually and setting the pattern for the rest of our relationship and our marriage. And guys, that's not hard to do, but he was delighting himself in the Lord and listening to God. And I believe that that time of us just praying together, it just really set the course for the rest of our relationship. And so delight yourself in the Lord. And the other details, though doesn't mean life will be easy, tend to work out a little better when you're involving God in part of it.
so, yeah, 3 dates turned into 4, and on that 4th date, Molly felt it was necessary already, though early, for me to have that pivotal moment when I meet the parents. right? So I'm back down in the Twin Cities. I pick her up at her apartment. We drive to her childhood home in Minneapolis. Parents, you'll appreciate this reference. Students, you'll have no idea what I'm talking about. But her house that she grew up in is like straight out of Leave It to Beaver. It's this beautiful white house with ivy growing on the walls and pillars outside. We walk up the cobblestone.
Not cobblestone.
It's cobblestone. Well, it's brick. So we walk up the brick path to her door. Her mom opens up the door. She's got like this beautiful flowered apron on and a plate of cookies. She's like, "Come on in."
My mom does not sound like Minnie Mouse.
She sounds a little bit like Minnie Mouse. So we go in, and her dad is there in the living room, and he's like, standing there and pulls out his shotgun, and he's, "Have a seat." So, I'm kidding. It wasn't a shotgun, so it was a pistol. So we sat down, and we're having this great conversation with the parents, and maybe after a half hour or so, her dad kind of gets this little smirk on his face, and he leans forward in his lazy boy chair, and he hands me a clipboard. And on that clipboard are a couple of sheets of paper. Underneath the top sheet is what's called carbon copy. Students, when you send an email, if you even know what email is anymore, there's this little CC thing underneath the to thing. CC stands for carbon copy, which means a replica. But back in your parents' day, it was an actual blue sheet of paper that would literally copy the pressure of the pen on the white paper below it, making a carbon copy. You guys are like, you are so
passionate about
old.
carbon
You're saying,
copy.
"Craig, you are so old." Anyways, that's what he handed me, a clipboard with paper and carbon copy underneath it. And I'm looking at this paper, and I'm like, am I reading what I'm reading? I have a copy of it. I forgot it back in my backpack. But on the top, it says, "Application for permission to date my daughter." Application for permission to date my daughter, with questions like grade point average, Boy Scout rank, IQ, do you own a van, do you own a waterbed, where's the last place you would want to be shot? And like I had to fill out the application, turn it back into him, where he went over all of the questions in greater detail, where I could expand on my answers. And then he took that application. We walked upstairs to his office, where there were file cabinets and crates and boxes where all the other applications from men had happened in the past. And I'm looking at all of the categories on the files, and they say things like "call the cops," "when pigs fly," and I'm like, where is he going to put my application? And he took out this little manila envelope, and he stuck it inside. And on the outside of the envelope, it said, "We'll get back to you." I was like, whew, I felt pretty good after all the choices I had seen in that room.
Okay, true story. It really did go down like that, besides the shotgun. He didn't have one, and my mom didn't make cookies and sound like Minnie Mouse. But everything else was true. So what I want to emphasize here, as you heard that story, is that I wasn't 16 years old living at home with my parents and had to introduce, the guy that I was interested to my parents because it was like part of the deal. I was 26 years old. He was 35 years old. I was living on my own across town, but I chose to introduce him to my parents because I valued their wisdom and their perspective, and because there's something in the Bible that says a little bit about honor your father and mother. And I felt that was a way that I could honor my parents by seeking their opinion and wisdom early on in the relationship, getting them involved. And so I chose to partner with my parents. And that's a lesson that we want to encourage you to think about, teenagers, is to partner with your parents and or grandparents. Some of you are here today with mom, dad, grandparents, some other person who's maybe filling that parent role for you. That is the person that we want to encourage you to partner with. Check out this verse. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, so that it may go well with you. Who wants that? So that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long life on the earth. So I believe God's word. And I also believe there's another place in the Bible that says there's wisdom in gray hair. And so check out your parents' hair right now, your grandparents' hair. If there's some of them got a little gray hair, and gray hair is from you, okay? Your parents have a perspective that you don't. And so we want to encourage you to partner with them in every area of life, but man, especially when it comes to dating and this whole topic that we're talking about, you guys, they've been there. And some of them have stories of victory, like, yes, I made a good choice in this area and I want to tell you about it. Parents, some of you right now might be saying, oh, but I didn't make a good choice in that. That's okay, because remember, God redeems, he restores, he forgives, and he can use every part of your story to encourage your kid. And so we're not telling you to unpack all the gory details of every part of your life, but don't let Satan lie to you and say that your story is not valid, because maybe it's a little different than what you think it should have been. So we really want to encourage you guys to partner with each other, and this is so cool, because here you are, partnering together. A lot of times we share this message just to teenagers. They're like, come speak to our teenagers. We're like, bring the parents, and the parents don't show up. But you guys are here, and this is awesome. And we are you're already steps ahead. And moms and dads, don't believe the lie also that you're not equipped. Because you know what? The person that equips is Jesus. You just turn to him. You seek advice. You turn to the other people you admire and you look up to. If it's not your own parents, find a role model, another parent who you say, oh, I think they kind of know a little bit more what they're doing in this area, and use the community, the church. And then finally, before moving on, Craig and I just brought with us something we want to give to each family. They're called interview questions for parents to answer. There's 50 of them, and we have a table down there, so everyone in the like one person in the family get it. And guys and girls, this is what there's something for you in this, okay? I'm going to give you a great idea right now. Your parents, grandparents, mom, dad, whatever, they would love to talk to you more. Wouldn't you, mom and dad? You'd love that. You'd love to talk. I hope you would. If you don't, get on board. And so this is like a starting point. And so guys and girls, you can say, hey, mom and dad, grandma, grandpa, remember what the speaker said? If you take me out to Dairy Queen, I will ask you 5 questions on this list. And then you just keep doing it. There's 50. You guys could get so much ice cream if you do that, okay? So they're random questions like, what kind of student were you? What did you do to have fun when you were young? Do you believe in love at first sight? Do you like your job? I mean, random things, funny things. So partner with your parents. It's biblical and it's practical.
So actually, later that night, after the conversation with mom and dad, Molly and I just kind of hung out in the living room, and like people do when they're young and in love, they
well, I was young. You were old. I'm sorry, that was mean. I'm going to be walking home.
So anyways, it was time for me to take her back to her apartment. Like, again, I keep telling you, I had a 2-hour drive back to Long Prairie, and it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. So we leave her parents' house, make the 15-minute drive back to her apartment, and at this point, I'm thinking, we've prayed together. We've had some great conversations. I got put on file with her dad in the best possible category imaginable, and I'm enjoying where things are headed. And I want Molly to know that I'm serious about pursuing a relationship with her, that I don't want to play games. I'm not interested in messing with her head. So I'm thinking to myself, the best way that I can let her know that I'm serious about this relationship is if I could ask her if I could give her a kiss goodnight. And so as I'm picturing this in my head and it's all lining up, I'm like, this is going to be perfect. So we get back to the apartment. We enter the parking lot. I get out of my car. I get out of my car door. I go around. Guys in the room, I'm just going to pause for a second again and repeat what I just said. I got out of my door. I went around to her door. I opened up her door. She stood up, got out, and I closed it on her leg. So that didn't work out okay? She got out. I opened the door for her. Small, tangible way that you can serve someone else. You might say, well, Craig, I'm 10. Okay, that's just kind of weird. You can serve your mom. You can serve your grandma. You can practice today.
Your sister. Ooh.
Your sister. I didn't want to go there, but okay, your sister. So we got out and we're walking to the apartment door, and I'm telling you, everything is perfect. It is a beautiful night. The stars are out. The planets are aligned. The birds are singing. The angels are chorusing. The dogs are barking. Like, everything is perfect. And we walk up to the front door, and we stop and we pause, and I look into her blue eyes, and she looks back into my amazing hazel eyes, and I say to her, "Hey, Molly, would it be okay if I gave you a kiss goodnight?" And she looked back into my beautiful hazel eyes, and she said to me, "Oh, sick, how dare you!" Slap, slap, slap across the face, kicked me to the curb. I crawled to my car, got back inside in shame, and drove back in humiliation to Long Prairie for the next 2 hours of my life, and that was a night I will never forget.
That is nice.
That is pretty much what happened.
Oh, you are not telling the whole truth there.
That's what I remember.
Okay, guys, so true story. He did ask if he could give me a kiss goodnight, which, by the way, just recognize, he said, "Can I give you a kiss?" That's important to notice, because a lot of people feel like if they go out with someone or they, whatever, send a picture on Instagram or whatever, yeah, you go to prom, that the person owes them something. And so sometimes people's perspective is like, "Hey, I just met your parents, give me a kiss." It was the opposite. He wanted to give, not take. So he asked me in this nice way, and I was like, and I said, "Oh, shoot." And I literally put my head down between my legs like this, as he's just hanging out there wondering what on earth is going on. I said, "Thank you for asking." I said, "Now is not the time. Can we talk about this later?" That's all I said. Poor guy. He's like, "What?" Like, does he have something in his teeth? He's like, "Okay." And so he turns and walks away, and you probably do feel like you got kicked to the curb verbally. I did shut you down in a nice way. I'm sorry. Oh, guys, here's the deal. There's a little part of my story that I hadn't told Craig yet. I thought it would come up. Oh, it came up that night in an awkward way. When I was, rewind, 13 years old. Who's 13? Raise your hand. Who's been 13? Raise your hand. Who's going to be 13? Great. This applies to everyone. Okay. When I was 13, I went to this True Love Waits conference. And it was this purity night, and we talked about, like, God's boundaries for sex and how he wants the best for us. And so I signed this little commitment card. And it's here. My dad kept it on file. He gave it to me when I was 16 and allowed to date. He said, "Just so you remember." It says, "Believing that true love waits, I make a commitment to God, myself, my family, those I date, my future spouse, and my children." Crazy to think, like, my commitment back then is affecting my kids now today. That's crazy to think about. "And my children to be sexually pure and sex-free until the day I enter a covenant marriage relationship." Molly Barnhart, signed 2/17/1993. So this didn't do anything magical, just so you know, okay? If you chose to sign something later tonight, it's not magic. It's not like, woo, superpowers, you will never be attracted sexually, and you have these. No, it's a way to show people and others and yourself what you're committed to. So I made that commitment, and I was like, okay, I got this. I'm not going to have sex and do the stuff involved with sex. Like, I'll keep my private parts private, okay? But, I was always excited about my first kiss. And I guess when I was 16, some guy did try to kiss me, but I didn't want to kiss him, so he fell off balance as he leaned forward and literally fell into my parents' front closet. It was so embarrassing. But anyways, at age 17, I hadn't officially had my first kiss, and I went to this camp, and I heard this speaker talk about how before she met her husband, she had made choices sexually that she really regretted. Like, didn't do things the way that God intended, but came to a point in her life where she said, okay, I'm done with that. That's the past. God, forgive me. And he did, and he redeemed me and restored me. And she made a commitment, she said, from that point forward, that she was going to save her next first kiss for her husband on their wedding day. She didn't know who her husband was, but she made this big commitment. And then she, fast forward a couple years later, meets who her husband will be. Turns out he had like a similar story, made choices he wished he hadn't. God brought him to a point in his life where he was like, you know what, from this point forward, I'm going to save my first kiss. They separately made this crazy commitment that you don't hear about very often. They got married, shared their first kiss together on their wedding day, and they've been married like 20 years now and have 5 kids. It's great, awesome to see where their story has come. So I heard that story. And some of you, I see a little teary-eyed, you're like, oh. And I was like that too. I was like, oh, that is so sweet. For them, not me. I'm kissing boys, okay? Just need to find the right one. So, God did this thing. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but when you talk to him, when you involve him in your life, when you seek him, he will speak to you. And sometimes the way he speaks to you is just through kind of like a little on your heart, if you've felt that way before. And God would not let me forget that story. So I'm like, oh, God, as a 17-year-old, I'm like, God, no, he wasn't 17. Maybe he was, I don't know, but I was the 17-year-old. And I said, God, I just prayed about it. I just felt like he was reminding me of this story and calling me to this commitment. And guys, I had no idea that God was going to call me to be some purity abstinence speaker speaking across the country. I did not know that, but God did. And so he must have known that I would need to live to perhaps a slightly higher standard just to be an example and to show people that it's possible and worth it. So when I was 17 years old, I said, okay, God, I will save my first kiss for my husband. Not because I think that God calls everyone to do that, by the way, just so you know. I don't think God calls everyone to do that. I believe God calls everyone to something, and it's good to seek him on what that is. I also didn't think kissing was wrong necessarily in certain situations, but I said yes to God. And so I made that commitment when I was 17, made the mistake of telling my 2 brothers. Yeah, that was a big mistake. They made fun of me and said, no guy will ever date me, let alone marry me if I'm not going to kiss them first. That was a little discouraging, but I got over it. Then I met Craig like 9 years after I made this commitment. And let me tell you, by the way, having that commitment really helped in the dating area because it just got rid of the losers right away. I mean, really, like if you know what your standard is and your commitment is and you stick to that, like the people who are just into whatever they want, they're not going to pay attention because you know what you want and it's not that. So there we are at the door. Okay, we're back to the story. I'm not going to tell him this whole thing at 2 in the morning, okay? So all I said was, oh, thanks for asking. Now is not the time. Can we talk about this later? That is all I said to the poor guy. I'm so sorry. That must have been rough. So he left, drove 2 hours back. The next morning I call him up and I said, can we talk about this? There's more I need to tell you. So we met halfway, each drove an hour, went to a little park in Albany, Minnesota, set out my Rainbow Mexico blanket. I got on a mission trip. Detail you didn't need to know. Sorry about that. And I take about half an hour, if you can imagine, because I'm okay with talking. And I tell him all the reasons why I made this commitment. And I said, and the whole time, he's like that, okay? He is the introvert in the relationship. He's not giving me anything. He's not like, oh yeah, great, thumbs up, man. I'm like, half an hour. I'm like, what does he think? And he's just like, were you breathing? I don't think you were blinking. It was like you were having a staring contest. You were paying attention, I think, but didn't say anything, you guys. Instead, he pulls out from his backpack a little sparkly gift bag, and with no words, hands it to me and says, and doesn't say anything, and it says MJ, that's a nickname he calls me, MJ until that day. Hands it to me. And I open it up. Guess what it's full of? Oh, you're a romantic one. Okay, kiss for you. There you go. Awesome. Oh, anybody else who wants a kiss from Craig? There you go. There you go. Anyone over here want a kiss from Craig? Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh, that's okay. Okay, now here you go. Here you go. Here's a kiss from Craig. Give that to her. There, sorry.
I'm feeling used right now.
Oh, I know.
Throwing my kisses away.
I should have used hugs. But anyways, he gave me a bag of kisses and really didn't need to say many words, and that was amazing. And what he said to me was, your commitment now becomes my commitment. And pretty much thought, well, let's just get married now, because I think it's pretty clear you're the kind of guy I've been waiting for. No, we got back to his car in the parking lot of Dairy Queen, another very romantic spot.
I can pick them.
You are good at that. And he gave me a mixed CD of special songs, and Then he asked me to officially be his girlfriend. And I was pretty excited about that because I was 26. I'd gone on dates with several guys, but I never got to the boyfriend stage. Not for lack of opportunity, but it just didn't feel right. And it felt right with him, so I said yes, and I got pretty excited. And I may have taken a video of myself, which I may show you, but only on one stipulation here. Okay, this was filmed, yes, in my car, but I did have my hand on the wheel, and this was before the distracted driving rules, so technically it wasn't illegal. It was stupid, but not illegal. So don't do what I did, but enjoy my excitement, and don't have the volume too loud, because it could overwhelm you.
I don't know if she gets more embarrassed by that or I get more embarrassed by it, but it's equally embarrassing. I love what Molly said. Just as she said, I was 26. I was 26 and I had my first boyfriend. Some of you are not 16 and you're dying inside to find Mr. or Mrs. Right. I don't think I'm the best guy in the world, but I humbly say I think I'm the best guy for Molly. I don't think she's the best woman on the planet, but I think she's the best woman on the planet for me. Okay? And I do think she's the best on the planet, but that's subjective, but accurate. Are you willing to wait for God's best? We have found that in friendships and relationships that we have with others, the older people get, the more they are willing to settle for less than God's best. At some point, they had standards. At some point, they had guidelines. At some point, they had these ideas of the type of person they wanted to marry. But the older they got, the more desperate and fearful they became, and those standards that they once had set in place all of a sudden become optional. I want them to love Jesus. Well, he's heard of Jesus. He's gone to church once or twice before, so that counts, right? And we make exceptions for them, hoping that one day they'll turn into the person we once desired, as opposed to waiting for God's best. You know, that brings us to another lesson, because as Molly shared with me what her boundary was, and I said to her, that is no longer your boundary, that is our boundary. That is our commitment together. And we kept that throughout our relationship. And guys, I just want to reiterate our next lesson, which is simply this. Boundaries are beneficial. Boundaries are a good thing. Parents, you know this as you give your children boundaries from day one. Like if you have steep stairs in your house, you probably get a gate or you shut the door and you cut them off because that boundary is important for them to truly live, to not have regrets for the rest of their life.
Or broken bones.
Exactly. So boundaries are a good thing. Try driving home tonight, wherever your home is, and try to ignore the boundaries on the road. The double yellow line in the middle and the white line on the side, and just take a free-for-all through the ditches and cornfields on your way home. You will find out very quickly that boundaries are beneficial. Now, when it comes to sexual things, when it comes to intimacy, boundaries are beneficial. And you might have heard that statement about Molly and I saying we weren't going to kiss until our wedding day, and thinking to yourself, if that's what they're going to call us to tonight, I am out of here. Like, that is crazy talk. And that's fine. That's fine. But then my question is, if that's not it, then what is your boundary? Okay, what is your boundary? Oftentimes students will come up to us and say, hey, love your story. I'm not going to do sex and stuff either. What's and stuff? Like, what does and stuff mean? So, guys, you need to know your boundaries. All right? Figure them out. Because if you wait and you find yourself in a situation where you're going to be tempted physically, you're probably dead in the water. To figure it out then, you need to know now what you're going to do. If you have never been to a party, all right, and you think one day you might show up at a party, and you think that maybe one day there's going to be alcohol at that party, decide now what you will do when you are in that house and alcohol just randomly shows up. What are you going to do? Are you going to stay? Are you going to hold a cup? If you're going to hold a cup, what's in the cup? Like, make those decisions and have those conversations ahead of time, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. At some point, alcohol is going to show up. At some point, you're going to end up alone in a room with someone of the opposite sex, and the pressure's on. It is going to happen. So then, what will you do? Number one, you have to know your boundary. Number two, you have to communicate your boundary. Talk to a parent. Talk to someone you can trust. Communicate that boundary so you can find accountability in that decision. And not only communicate that to someone else, but you better communicate it to the person you're in a relationship with. Molly never communicated her boundaries, so I'm ready to go in for the kill, and she's like, okay, boundary talk. If we had had that conversation ahead of time, we could have saved myself from like 10 years or 10 hours of embarrassment. Okay, it wasn't really painful. It didn't last long, but you have to communicate your boundaries. So you have to know them, you have to communicate them, and then you do whatever it takes to protect them. Protect those boundaries. Set yourself up to succeed. When I was in 7th grade, I found myself alone in a bedroom with the girl at a party where the parents were not involved. They may have been upstairs, I don't know. But the girl was putting pressure on me to do things physically in 7th grade. And you know what? I didn't know much, but I knew somewhere in this book it said, flee sexual immorality. Run away. So my little 13-year-old mind, that's what I did. I said, excuse me, coming through. And I took off and I ran. And I can't make this up. She ran after me. I remember distinctly running out of the room, down the stairs, through the living room, and out the back door. And she ran after me. And I ran through the backyard, and I stood in the middle of a garden on top of a sprinkler that was spraying back and forth, getting soaking wet. And she didn't want to get wet. And that's how I saved my virginity for this woman some 25 years later.
Thanks, babe.
Right. So you have to know, you have to communicate, and my, oh my, you have to protect those boundaries.
I just want to add a phrase that I said one time a long time ago, and recently some girl came up to me and told me how much that impacted her, and so I want to make sure we say it again. Because you're hearing the word virgin and virginity, and he just saved his virginity, and some of you are like, well, too late for me, you know, I don't have that, or lost that. Okay, this is a bold statement, but I believe it's true. God cares, God doesn't care as much about your virginity as he cares about your purity, okay? Because if God just cared about our virginity, then say you cross the line and, technically not a virgin anymore, too late for you, you're done, right? Purity is a much different thing. And someone who's crossed the line, who's gone past those boundaries, can say, from this point forward, I am pursuing purity, and that is God's heart for you, for all of you, for every one of you, no matter what stage you're in, married or not, young or old, we are called to pursue purity, and God cares about that, regardless of where you've been. And so if you don't know what your boundaries are, talk to God about it, talk to your parents about, set them, and trust that Christ in you is going to help you maintain that.
And we would say purity in all areas of your life, okay? Not just physically speaking, but in all areas of your life. Keep your mind pure. Think about the good stuff. take every thought captive. Stay away from stuff that is going to cause you to stumble and fall. Stay away from those things. Purity in every relationship you have, including your relationship with the Lord. Make it pure. Now, it wasn't long after that night where Molly and I were heading across the country. We were spending an entire week together, and we were visiting some friends of hers in Tennessee. On the way back from Tennessee, we were in the Chicago area, and our housing plans had fallen through. So now I had to think fast and think, okay, what are we going to do about our housing arrangements? So the only thing I could think of was to get a hotel room. And there was a couple of problems with that. First of all, I'm a cheapskate, and I didn't want to get 2 rooms. But then what's going to happen if I suggest we get 1 room? And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, first of all, let's just find a place. So I wanted to find a place where she would feel safe and secure and valued. So we pulled into the Motel 6, and
In like a super scary neighborhood, you guys.
Wasn't
super
that bad.
Yes, it was.
So-
Someone died like outside the window,
no,
okay?
it was just kids drawing with chalk. That's all it was, and it looked like Gumby. So we get to the hotel, and I just decided at that point that I would walk her to the room, and I went into the room. I took a blanket. I took a pillow. I went down to my RAV4 pickup. I don't know why they call it a pickup, because it's not a pickup. It's like the size of a Matchbox car. But I took the pillow, I took the blanket, and I gave Molly the room that night. I allowed her to sleep in the room. I went down to my pickup because the thought occurred to me, maybe we wouldn't even do anything. But the Bible also tells us to guard against even a hint of sexual immorality. So what would happen? What would happen even if we, took some tape and put it down the center of the room where I slept in the bathroom? What would happen if we came walking out of that room and somebody we just happened to know was there also? I'm like, hey, Pastor Craig, how are abstinent speaker Molly? How are the two of you doing together? Oh, this is great. Like, what would happen then? But to guard against the appearance and to guard against temptation, to flee sexual immorality and even the temptation, I slept in the parking lot and she slept in the room.
Well, you slept in your car in the parking lot.
Right.
But I remember going out to the railing and looking over and like picturing him crammed in his car. And I had this really cheesy thought, okay? And I thought, oh, that's my Romeo. Girl, you're with me, I know. And it's not because Hollywood would say that Romeo would have got out of his car, scaled the hotel wall, jumped over the railing, came in the room, and slept with me, right? That's what Hollywood says Romeo would do. This is why I said that's my Romeo, because he didn't. Because he had boundaries. He respected me. He respected what God had called us to and did the harder thing. Guys, sometimes following Christ it's never been promised in the scriptures that it'll be easy, but it is worth it, and he is worth it. And so we want to encourage you, lesson number 5, to flee temptation, to flee those tempting situations. It'll make your life so much easier. Oh my goodness. If you stay out of the tempting situations to begin with, it will make it a lot easier.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever done this or not, but in challenging you and encouraging you to flee those situations, to stay away from temptation, oftentimes, okay, students, like I said, if you find yourself alone in a room with someone of the opposite sex and the parents are upstairs and you're thinking to yourself, wow, let's just watch a TV show and, these stools are kind of uncomfortable. It's more comfortable on the bed. Let's just watch it there on the bed. And it's dark and you're alone and you're on a bed and you're watching TV. Guess what? You're doomed. You're doomed. You can drop to your knees and say, Lord, please help me out of the situation, but chances are you're doomed. That is why the Lord Jesus himself instructs his disciples and instructs us here today. Through the Lord's Prayer, he said, this then is how you should pray. Pray that you're not led into temptation. Pray that you don't even go there, as opposed to praying when you are tempted. If you struggle with pornography on the internet and computer, it's pretty hard to fall when you don't go near a computer. When the computer is a centerpiece on the kitchen table in front of your family for the world to see. Pretty easy to fall on your smartphone alone in your room when you have internet access by yourself. So flee tempting situations. Stay away from things where you know it's going to be hard on you. Go on dates with multiple people. Get to know someone one-on-one in group settings. Have more dates at McDonald's. I don't know if you've ever picked up on this or not. Have you ever walked into a McDonald's before, taken a look around the restaurant and thought to yourself, wow, there is nobody here having sex in McDonald's. Nobody here. The employees would not like it. Ronald himself would frown upon it, okay? And the reason that's not happening is because it's not a tempting environment. Stay away from those tempting situations. 1 Corinthians 10:13 says, no temptation has seized you except what is common. And God is faithful. He always provides a way out. He always provides a trap door. There's always an escape hatch. I have students tell me all the time, Craig, it just happened. There was nothing I could do. And I go, well, according to Scripture, there's always a way out. And the temptation that you faced is pretty normal. And God always gives us a way out. So either you're lying or he's lying. And I love you, but I'm going to go with you on this one. I understand what happened is unfortunate. I understand that you have regrets, but there was a way out, and there was an escape hatch. So I want you to realize that as well. Flee temptation. And, you know, some of you say, well, I can flee physically. Okay, I can run out of a room like you did, Craig, but, man, my mind is messed up. I'm just going to be honest. My mind is messed up. In the book of Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, it says to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Pornography is not your friend. Some of you need to close down social media sites. It's not pornography, but it's just other pictures that's acceptable to post. That's not flat out nudity, but it's still causing you to struggle mentally. And we can be transformed by the renewing of our mind to think about the good stuff, the things that are pure and lovely and admirable and excellent and praiseworthy according to Philippians 4:8, to think about those good stuff, to do the practical things, to get filters, to get accountability. Admit you have a problem. Ask someone to do this journey with you. Can you keep me accountable? I'll help keep you accountable. Fill your mind with the good stuff. So flee sexually, flee mentally, and we've already said it, but flee drugs and alcohol. Very, very few times in the history of mankind have good decisions physically ever been made while intoxicated or high.
I just want to bring this back again to you guys. Your decisions now will affect your future. One of the best gifts that Craig has given me are his eyes. Now, I know pornography can be a struggle for girls just as much as guys. Unfortunately, it's more and more statistics are showing us that. But from a female's perspective, married to a man who's like any other guy and has those desires, Craig made a decision as a teenager, though hard as it was, and it's harder for you guys now because of the internet and all that, to not look at pornography. And he saved his eyes for me. And that is such a good gift. You guys, I know, guys, you're in the midst of it, and it's hard, and it's so difficult, but would you partner with Jesus and any other person you need to help you to overcome that struggle with the help of Christ, because it is not only going to be freeing for you, but if God has someone for you in the future, guys and girls, it is a gift to your future spouse. It is.
People ask me all the time, Craig, how did you propose to Molly? Well, I was back down in the Twin Cities, had a motorcycle at the time. We spent the time riding the motorcycle around. We did some rock climbing in Taylor's Falls. We came back to the coffee shop where we had originally met that very first night face-to-face. And there at the coffee shop, we got off the motorcycle. She sat down at a chair. I pulled up a chair out by some water features outside of the coffee shop. And I got down on my knees. I took off her boots, I took off her socks, and you're thinking, Craig, this is the oddest proposal I've ever heard of. But I took out a bowl. I filled the bowl with water. I filled it with some soap, and I began to wash her feet. And I just said, Molly, this is obviously symbolic because of what Christ did for his disciples, because Jesus himself said he did not come to be served, but he came to serve. And I pulled the ring out from my pocket, and I said, Molly, would it be okay if I served you for the rest of our life? And at that point, she
Sounds good to
screamed.
me.
We gave each other a hug and a big kiss, and we didn't kiss. If you're paying attention, we didn't kiss, so we high-fived and pound and exploded. My family and her family were inside the coffee shop. They came out, they surrounded us, and they prayed over our engagement and our future marriage together.
You know, I screamed yes because I knew pretty early on, right? This was the man I'd been praying for. I screamed yes, not because it was a beautiful ring, though it was. Good job on that, babe. I screamed yes because I found a man that was more in love with Jesus than he would ever be with me. And that's what makes our marriage work. That is what makes our marriage work. It doesn't mean we don't have tough times, you guys. We do. Any relationship is tough, right? But guys and girls, moms and dads, if you are looking to another human being to fulfill all your needs and to be everything for you, they never will, because we're not perfect. But Jesus Christ is perfect. And so my prayer has always been that I would end up with someone whose number one relationship is Jesus. And that would make our relationship so much better. And so that brings us to our final lesson, which we believe is the most important if you forget everyone else. And this is it, number 6, only Christ can complete you. When Craig proposed to me and then we eventually got married, it's not like that day when we got married, it's not like I found my second half, okay? Like, oh, I'm fully whole now because I'm married. Because Hollywood says that, right? Like, you're not really complete until you meet the other person, and that's a big old lie. When you know Christ, you are completely whole in him. That's what makes you complete. There are people, I believe, that are not complete. Those are people who don't know Christ. Christ completes us. So he was fully complete. I was fully complete. Not perfect. Sorry, babe, you weren't perfect. Neither was I. But when you're complete in Christ, that's what makes the best relationships. So we want to encourage you to make your number one relationship about seeking Christ and being complete in him. And also, I want to ask you to consider, like Craig getting down on one knee and asking me to marry him, proposed to me, right? Invited me into a lifelong relationship with him. I said yes. Well, you've all been proposed to. Some of you, yeah, you're like, yeah, I know, I have the ring to prove it. Every one of you has been proposed to by a man that stood up on a cross and stretched out his arms. And he said, will you enter a lifelong relationship with me? He never promised that life would be easy. In fact, in John, he says, life will be hard, but I'll give you peace. Have you said yes to that proposal? Because if you haven't accepted Christ as your Lord and Savior, guys, all this stuff is going to feel like a lot of work because you're doing it on your own. So we want you to consider that. Have you said yes to Jesus? And if you want to know more, talk to one of us after or someone else, but really the Bible makes it pretty simple. It says, if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. You don't have to do anything. You just have to agree with what God's already done.
So let me fast forward, and we'll wrap this up. We'll land the plane here with our wedding day. We had a really small wedding, real intimate wedding at North Central University with 750 of our family and friends who were there that day. We had a really fun reception at a place called the Roller Gardens in St. Louis Park. Molly asked me, she says, are we going to have a dance for our reception? I said, I'd rather go roller skating. And she said, done. So about 450 or so of those guests came roller skating with us afterwards. But you can imagine the excitement of a wedding day. You've all been there. And, of course, the momentum builds to those famous words that pastors and ministers and officials say when they say those words. You may now kiss your bride. Now, we got to be completely honest and clarify that our first kiss though it was our wedding day, was not in the ceremony. I am a relatively private guy. I'm an introvert. I didn't know what would happen if there in front of 750 people I botched the kiss. So I was like, could we do that privately, just you and I, earlier in the day? So she agreed. We had our first kiss early in the day, but our first real public display of affection was that moment. And there we stood, and with expectancy. And here's what happened, guys. Instead of ushering those famous words, "Craig, you may now kiss your bride," my then fiance was taken aback when she heard the words from the minister, who had the audacity, instead of saying, "You may now kiss your bride," he actually said, "Let us pray." Let me take you to that moment with yet another clip.
And now, by the authority that is invested in me, as a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ, I declare you, Craig, and you, Molly, husband and wife, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. What God has joined together, let no one seek to tear asunder. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you. Son, Jesus Christ. You may now kiss your bride.
Now you've been to our wedding, you can leave the gifts at the back. We take cash, It has been a privilege to share our story, but it would be heartbreaking to us if what you went away with tonight was Craig and Molly's story. Oh, we would have failed. Oh, we use our story because it draws you in and there's funny things, but guys, this is God's story. And what is your story with him going to be like? What is it like? What do you want it to be like? What does his word say it can be like? Life to the full, abundant. One time, Craig and I shared this story, and a girl that we know and love came up to us after and said, "You guys, your story is great, but it's unattainable." And she just had this look of discouragement, like, "That's nice for you, but I could never have that kind of story." Oh, we called that lie out right away, didn't we? Because that's a lie that Satan wants you to believe, is that, oh, that's for other people, but not me, because of what I've done or what I'm like or the lies that I'm believing. And so we want to ask you, what is your story going to be like? Because you and God together writing it, that is incredible. And this is not the greatest love story. This is the greatest love story. Jesus Christ giving his life for you. And you know what, and speaking of stories, it's so encouraging to us to know that there are people who will hear this message and say, yeah, I want to partner with God, and I want to have the kind of story that he wants for me. And how cool that we found out that a couple from your church, Katie, who heard me speak this message like 9 years ago when she was 14 years old and I wasn't even married yet, was prompted by the Holy Spirit to set boundaries and commitments, and then end up marrying Trisket, as I like to call him. That's my new nickname for him. And then you guys are 22 years old, right? About there somewhere, and they heard a message and said, "God, what do you want from me in this?" And they partnered with him, and he has written for them a unique story. And moms and dads, don't you dare believe the lie that it's too late for you to get back on track, because God redeems and restores and renews. And do this together with those that you're sitting next to. Yeah, tonight is going to be just a unique opportunity as Molly looked back on
a time where she was in camp as a teenager. And I can look back at moments at places like Trout Lake Camp where I met Cameo, and moments where I say that was a time and a moment that changed my life forever.
When you met Cameo.
Right, that
Okay,
I'll never
just
be the
clarifying.
same since meeting Cameo. But tonight is going to be a moment and an opportunity for you to look back on this night to say, that was a night where I gave God this, where I decided that. And so that's what I'm really most excited about. Just a couple of really quick things before we go downstairs and continue that we want to mention. We'd love to stay in contact with you. If we can be your friends in ministry or encourage you down the road, there are some ways that you can do that through social media and other things. And we have some stuff that we want to give to you to help equip you downstairs as well. One of the things that Molly has is she shot a video, 9-10 years ago. It's a DVD. It's just called Keep Your Pants On. We have since reshot that. And there's a more updated one that is yet to be finalized. But we're going to give you guys one of these DVDs you can take home as a family to go a little deeper on the why wait message. You can pass it on to someone else if you want. So we have a table downstairs. Just stop by the table. We'd be happy to give you one of these as a family. There's a couple things for sale if you're interested in that too. We've just got some Keep Your Pants On stickers. There's some buttons down there. One says, I met the cheeseball chick, right? You can
Give that away.
That. Oh, yeah.
Don't hurt anyone, though.
All right.
Just throw it out there like a
All
Frisbee.
right, we'll just
All right. Woo!
Careful.
Oh,
Hey,
good catch,
that was
man.
perfect.
Let's hold this up.
And I'm just going to mention this too, not because we need the money, but because I think it's pretty darn cool.
We want you guys to wear this at school, man.
If you have courage and won't get in trouble by your administration, this actually glows in the dark,
Yeah.
okay? So parents, you may want to buy these for your kids, and when they go out on their date, you'll be like, you can go, but you're going to put this on before you leave.
Because if the lights go down, bam!
Right, and parents, you can wear this too when they come home and be like,
No, when they come
greet
to
them
meet
at
the
the
parents.
door.
That'd be
Right, so-
awesome.
it's just all kind of reasons to pick one of these up, but
You guys, we put this on here. We've just felt like any messages we have and have got video, we don't want to sell them. We want to get them out there. So we're getting rid of these, but this is also online. So if you don't want a hard copy, go to our YouTube channel. The full length Keep Your Pants On talk is available. If you want to tell your cousin in Oregon, listen to the Cheeseball Chick, whatever, that's fine. It's free. Lessons from a Love Stories online, other messages we've given, and ways to stay in touch. So please feel free to do that.
let's head downstairs.
Yeah, and
Right.
go back to your tables, I suppose, and then we're going to hear what's
All right,
next.
let's continue and head downstairs.